Okay, well, welcome everyone. And I guess we'll begin. So today I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text number 28. We'll begin with saying prayers to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Vraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivade Paskadyade Siddharane. This chapter is called Knowledge of the Absolute.
What happened to Advaita's markings?
Oh, he erased them because I gave him.
Where was that coming from? Okay, so text number 28. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta pujante mam tridavrataha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So Prabhupada's purport: those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gradually they can meditate in trance on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the process of being situated on the spiritual platform. This elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. In the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.2 that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahor Vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. Tamo Dwaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam. All the devotees of the Lord transverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Thus, when is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. So the text again. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajante mam dridavrataha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Here in this verse, Krishna says the word dvandva, of duality. We see duality principally because we think we have a different interest than Krishna's interest. As it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vayam dvitiya viniveshitasyad ishadavatasya viparyo smriti. That fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. So currently, every conditioned soul is in Maya. There are different varieties of Maya. Sometimes we think there's good Maya in the mode of goodness, and then there's not so good Maya in the mode of passion. And then there's not good Maya in the mode of ignorance. But it's all Maya. And what is that Maya? The Maya is that we don't see things properly. We see things, for instance, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nishoshiti Nakankshiti Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Lavate Param. That because we're in the illusory energy, therefore we're attached to this body and things in relationship to the body. Now that attachment means that there are things that are pleasant to the body. There are people who are pleasant to that give our body pleasure, and there are people who don't give our body pleasure. So this is called dvesha and iccha, as Krishna had said in the previous verse, iccha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani samoham sagayanti parantapa. That all of us, we were born into illusion, being overcome by the attachment to desire and hate. So our principal desire is we'd like to become God. And our principal hate is the fact that we can't do it. So this has been a problem since time immemorial, struggling to become the controller of at least some part of Krishna's creation in order to enjoy it with our senses. Now, as soon as we want to become the controller of the illusory energy, and as soon as we want to enjoy the illusory energy apart from Krishna's service, then the result is that we become covered by illusion. And in that illusion, we see sometimes people as our friends, or we could say our devotees. And sometimes we see people as our enemies. They become the demons. Everyone in this material world has their collections of friends and a collection of demons. Those who are devotees of ourselves and things in relation to ourselves, they're our friends to one degree or another. And anyone who's against the things that we're attached to, they become the demons or the enemies. But ultimately speaking, everyone is in duality because everyone has a collection of friends and enemies in this world, and people do not see the reality that there is no real friend in this world. There is no real enemy. As Prahlad Maharaj said, the only real enemy in this world is our uncontrolled mind. Why is that? Because ultimately everyone is our friend. Everyone is a servant of Krishna. Everyone is eternally related to us as part of the same spiritual family. But because we don't see things properly, we identify people with their gross and subtle bodies, or we see other living entities according to their gross and subtle bodies. And we assume that if this living entity will gratify my desires, then he's my friend. And if he's an obstacle to such gratification, then he becomes my enemy. But this has nothing to do with either our real identity or the real identity of any other living entity. And therefore, when we choose to be an illusion, Krishna says, Naham prakasha sarvasha, that I'm never manifested to the foolish and unintelligent. So who is foolish and unintelligent? It is not people PhD degree, that makes them intelligent, or people who have a fantastic memory, or can make a lot of money. This is not what Krishna considers intelligent. An intelligent person is one who understands their eternal identity in relation to Krishna. Everyone else is, to one degree or another, foolish. Of course, there are the grossly foolish people, as Krishna said, as Prabhupada points out in this verse, who are completely overwhelmed by moha and dvandva, by illusion and duality. And these people, when they're attached to such illusion and duality, such as the mudhas, as Krishna earlier has said in this chapter, the mudhas are those who are grossly foolish. The whole idea is that if we simply eat and sleep and mate and defend in a very nice way or in a very plentiful way, if there's these opportunities are there, like a monkey has great opportunities for mating. If you go to India, especially Vrindavan, Prabhupada used to say that one monkey will have 20 wives. So the monkey doesn't have to get an extra job for each wife. Life is so simple for the monkey. He can have 20 wives and 100 children, and somehow or another, everything gets taken care of. You never find the monkey going bankrupt, getting a divorce, or having a hard time paying for their children's education. Everything is provided very easily by Krishna for the monkey. But the monkey's in the mode of ignorance or passion, and all he does is cause problems. So those who are mudhas, they think, if I can just get a place to sleep, something to eat, and some sex life, and some adequate protection, then my life is complete. I can't really ask for anything more. Similarly, for those who are naradamas, those who have in their past lifetimes performed some kind of pious activity, knowingly or unknowingly, and have gotten the chance to take birth in a, quote, fairly civilized society, where there is some idea of making an improvement in the material world, an improvement in sense gratification. Now, actual improvement would be to know how to get the basic material necessities of life. Shudras, or those in the mode of ignorance, are Shudras because although they don't know very much about the material world, still they take shelter of people who do know something about the material world. Especially the material world is made in such a way is that if we protect the cows and we take care of the land, then all our economic problems are solved. So that's called a vaishya. While the mudhas, they don't know where the food's coming from. They just hope it's there sometime. But the Shudras, they understand that food comes from sacrifice, and therefore, and sacrifice, as Krishna says, food comes from rain comes from sacrifice, and sacrifice comes from performing one's duty. In other words, all duties are meant for sacrificing for Krishna. Now, people may not like that because they don't like Krishna. They don't like the idea that there's a God controlling everything. And therefore, they're usually mudhas. Or they're usually naradamas, or indeed nowadays. They have something like a civilization, but the civilization is simply for a more sophisticated type arrangement for sense gratification. Especially nowadays, they have technology. So the naradamas, they're infatuated by not only their own eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but watching others eating, sleeping, mating, defending. That's called the smartphone. Foolish people, they use smartphones simply to watch other people eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and to make sure somehow or another that they can eat, sleep, mate, and defend too. But a Vaishya, he knows the actual value of the land and of the cows. He knows that without protecting the cow and without properly cultivating the land, it's not possible to have a sacrifice, nor to have peace of mind. If one does not protect the cows, then one will be simply a victim of trying to exploit the living entities in this world for food. If one does not know how to properly protect the land, one will simply exploit the land for one's own sense gratification. If one is not doing whatever they're doing for sacrifice, then they'll simply become desirous of controlling some part of the material nature, especially in order to serve their tongue, their belly, and their genitals, in order to enjoy. And the result is that they become either mudhas or naradamas. Naradamas, they're a little bit better at organizing for sense gratification, but generally they make it very complicated. They don't know how to live simply. They make everything complicated. Therefore, all these factories, all these cars, all these airplanes, all these technological advancements are all because people are naradamas. They've gotten some intelligence, they can manufacture technology, but they utilize it for useless things, making everything complicated. One can easily fill the stomach by drinking a little milk and making some nice preparations that one can get from the land, but they've made it very, very complicated. And because they've lost their intelligence, instead of protecting the cow, they wind up killing the cows. And then because they kill the cows, they wind up killing their children. And then they wind up killing each other and killing themselves. So that's called Naradama. But if one can produce nice food, instead of being, as it says here, sinful, like Prabhupada mentions here that the mudhas, they're foolish, the naradamas, they're sinful. Mudhas are also sinful, but they're not so energetic to accumulate unlimited amounts of sin, while the naradamas are, as we can see in modern society. Now, if one is a Vaishya or a Shudra, assisting the managers and the Brahmins perform sacrifice. And of course, in this age, we know that the primary sacrifice is Sankirtan, the chanting of the holy names, and the distribution of Krishna's glories. The whole sacrifice in this age is just to convince people that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that they should sacrifice their energies, whatever they may be. That if one has no energy, has no intelligence, then one can assist those who have intelligence. Or one can simply chant Hare Krishna and take prasadam. And those who have some resources, some money, some resources, they can also utilize it to spread the Hare Krishna movement. And those who are managers, who have some ability to organize things, they can organize things in such a way that the preachers can be effectively distributing knowledge about Krishna in many different ways. So previously the Brahmins, what were the Brahmins, are now those who are telling people about Krishna. The Kshatriyas are those who are organizing the Sankirtan movement. The Vaishyas are those who are giving the different necessary money or food or whatever material necessities are there for engaging in the Sankirtan movement. And the Shudras are those who are assisting, who are following the directions given by the Brahmins and by the Kshatriyas, or we could say by the preachers, the organizers, and those who have some money in order to effectively increase the Sankirtan movement and spread it properly. And what is the result? What are we actually trying to get? We're trying to get free from, as Krishna says in the next verse, Jara Marana Mokshaya mama shitiye tantiye, jara marana, birth, death, old age, and disease. Under this spell of the modes of material nature, people become insensitive to their situation. They don't realize that very shortly, all of us will have to leave this body. And if we have acted sinfully, our next destination will be very miserable. And even if we've acted piously, but we haven't become fully Krishna conscious, then we still have to come back to this material world and again suffer the same miseries of old age, disease, death, and having to take birth again. Only one who's actually engaged in Krishna's service, which Krishna says here, punya karmanam, only one who's actually engaged can understand how this material world is miserable and how we're in every living entity who's sinful is in danger of having to accept a very miserable situation in their next lifetime or many future lifetimes. In other words, devotional service is not one of the many options, especially in Kali Yuga. Not that if I feel like it, I'll chant my rounds. If I feel like it, I'll take prasadam. If I feel like it, I'll go to the temple. If I feel like it, I'll talk about Krishna to my friends or my relatives. It's really not an option. Well, it is an option. It's an option. Either we become clouded by duality and become subjected to the miseries of material nature, or we become free from them, nirmukta, by bhajante, by engaging Krishna's service with drita vrata, with determination. So our whole movement is simply meant to help us develop that determination so that we get free from these miseries. We should take them seriously. We shouldn't think, well, I'm in a nice country right now, or maybe it's not such a nice country, I don't know. Things are not as nice as they were 2 years ago in many countries. In any case, if I'm thinking my situation is not so bad, it may not be so bad, but it could get a lot worse. And even if it gets a lot better, there's no telling after that it's going to stay better. Rather than take the chance of going up and down in the wheel of samsara, one should at least make some effort to get out of this problematic material existence by engaging devotional service. So we're fortunate. We've heard this many, many times. I obviously am not the first one who's ever said this, but we have to be reminded, because Maya's business is to put us in illusion. Matter of fact, Maya doesn't have to put us in illusion because we're already in illusion. The question is, who's going to help us get out of illusion? Certainly Maya is not going to help us. Maya is always talking to us. Oh, it's not so bad. These people are fanatics. You know, you're a nice person. Krishna loves you. He's not going to put you in a miserable situation in the future. You got an eternal past because you've chanted your rounds today. Surely, eternally, you're going to get a break. Or maybe, who knows, by chance, even if you don't become perfect, then maybe by chance you'll go back to Godhead because Krishna will like the way you look. They'll say, well, she or he has a nice face. Well, why don't we bring them back to Godhead? I need a couple extra cowherd boys or gopis, so give them a free pass. No, we've been here since time immemorial. Fortunately, we've taken up the process of devotional service to one degree or another. And fortunately, we've gained some intelligence because of that. Intelligence meaning that we've understood to some degree or another that I'm not this body. And that has relieved us to some degree or another from the anxiety of worrying about the future. and also of lamenting about the past. Because in the material world, the past is all what we lament about is only in relation to this body. But just imagine if you remembered your past lifetimes and remember that you were in your last lifetime, you were a frog. And then you were croaking too loudly one day, and a black snake came and swallowed you. How much would you be lamenting now? Oh, I just shut my mouth. Then I'd still be a frog. No, actually, if we remember our past lives, it's only lamentable. And a matter of fact, whatever we were hankering for, and whatever we got, we wound up later on lamenting about because we lost it. And this lifetime is no different. Whatever we've accumulated by our hard endeavor or by Krishna's arrangement, eventually it's taken away from us. Therefore, real intelligence is the awakening of our Krishna consciousness so that in whatever circumstance we're under, whether it be poverty-stricken or opulence, that we don't forget who we actually are, that everything here belongs to Krishna, and that everyone here is Krishna's servant. And if I want to become a well-wisher of anyone, any living entity, I should simply help them remember their relationship with Krishna. We find in the pastimes of Krishna, many times even the demons were benedicted by the devotees. When Krishna was born, simultaneously, Yogamaya was born. And of course, we know that Yogamaya was taken by Vasudeva, apparently in exchange for Krishna, and brought to the prison cell in Mathura, where she awaited Kamsa to come to try to kill her. Of course, this child of Yasoda, Yogamaya, is not an ordinary child. So when Kamsa tried to kill her by smashing her against the floor, she rose up into the air with her 12 arms as Durga Devi and told Kamsa, "You fool, don't try to kill me, you're wasting your time. The person who's going to kill you has been born elsewhere." So Kamsa became repentant that what kind of sister do I have, Devaki? She must be quite an extraordinary personality to have Durga Devi herself as her daughter. And therefore he became very repentant and asked for forgiveness. So generally speaking, most of us, if someone comes along, if someone is known to us be the killer of 6 of our other children, smashing their heads as soon as they're born against the floor of the prison cell that we've been put into for 8 years, we probably think twice about forgiving them immediately. Because we see things from a different point of view. But Devaki and Vasudeva, being great personalities, immediately forgave Kamsa. Seeing that he seemed to be genuinely repentant and philosophical, they forgave him. Of course, later on, it proved that Kamsa was quite an adamant demon, but still, the soft-hearted devotees didn't hold any grudges against Kamsa. Similarly, Haridas Thakur, when he was beaten in so many marketplaces, and his torturers who were beating him told Haridas Thakur, "We've beaten you in 24 marketplaces. You're still alive, but if you don't die, then the Kazi is going to kill us. So please die." So Haridas Thakur, in spite of being beaten in so many marketplaces, that those who were beating him were trying to kill him. He said, all right, if you want me to die, no problem. And then he just died, apparently. I mean, that's quite generous. I'm sure if someone's beating me in 24 marketplaces and they ask me to die, I say, well, too bad. Find someone else to beat. Similarly, Vasudev, the leper, he was so generous, having leprosy. There were worms eating his body alive, and therefore there are holes throughout his body because of those worms. But he was so generous because of his seeing everything in relation to Krishna. Therefore, he saw even the worms as his own dear brothers or sisters. And therefore, when a worm would fall out of one of the holes in his body, he'd pick it up and put it back in the hole. So that's called transcendental vision. So that's possible to obtain. Of course, we can't imitate such a position as Haridas Thakur or Devaki in Vasudev or Vasudev the leper, but we can try to understand things and act in such a way as to become purified from these the illusory energy that we're under, known as the three modes of nature. That try to see how everyone is actually Krishna's servant, and then according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Yarideka, Tarikaha, Krishna, Upadesh. Then we should try to help anyone we come in contact with and help them somehow or another become conscious of Krishna. That's our hope. It is not one of the many options also that somehow or another we're going to chant our rounds, we're going to take prasadam, maybe go to sometimes to the temple, and then we're going to go back to Godhead. As we've discovered, chanting Hare Krishna is not always so easy, especially japa. Kirtan is certainly quite a bit easier to occupy the mind. But japa, our mind sometimes occupies us rather than we occupy the mind in Krishna consciousness. And what is it occupying ourselves in? It's all about what we don't have, what we're hankering for, either gross or subtle, comparing ourselves to others. Oh, they have one gulab jamun yesterday, and they had two gulab jamuns, and I only had one. Lamenting about the gulab jamun that left us behind. And today we're hankering that maybe today we'll get an extra gulab jamun, make up for the one we lost yesterday. So this world, our minds are always, when we're not fully conscious of Krishna or even partially conscious of Krishna, then our mind occupies us in only one of two things: hankering for something and lamenting about not having it, or hankering for something and getting it and then lamenting over losing it. So the big lamentation is around the corner when we lose everything, including our body and everything in relation to it. What kind of lamentation at the time of death is possible at that time? And generally, whatever we're most attached to at the time of leaving this body, that's our next destination. Therefore, Bharat Maharaj, he became free practically from everything, but he fell in love out of compassion, with a deer cub. And therefore he had to take come back as a deer. So what to speak of our poor selves? We can't really guarantee, since we're not even on the platform of bhava, exactly what are we going to think of at the time of death. So therefore we should try to the best we can, not only to avoid hankering lamentation, but avoid all the attachments we have to others on that basis, and all the animosity we have towards others on that basis. Because ultimately it comes out in our relationships. As soon as we see someone, then immediately there may be some attachment because it reminds us of someone else. The first thing that anyone recognizes, generally speaking, when one sees someone else walking down the street, one can see if it's a man or a woman. Why is that? Because everyone in this material world, since time immemorial, has attraction to either a man or a woman. Of course, in Kali Yuga, things may be slightly different or maybe very much different. Similarly, if someone reminds us of something that we like or something that we like, then we become attached to it. And if something reminds us of something that we don't like, then we become averse to it. And therefore, when we become averse to something in relationship to someone, then we have a negative relationship with them. If someone does something, takes something away from us, then we start hating that person. We may repress it and not yell at them, but then we just hate them. Every time we see them, we wish them, please disappear as soon as possible from this planet, from the universe. Make me happy. Oh Krishna, I'm your devotee. This person's a demon. Please take care of him. He is my enemy and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. This is just part of the material energy, the consciousness that it gives us. Like Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj was sitting on the lap of his father, Uttanapada, and his stepmother, Suruchi, told him that he was not qualified to sit on the lap of his father, because at that time, King Uttanapada had two wives. One of them was Suniti, the actual mother of Dhruva Maharaj, and the other was Suruchi, Dhruva Maharaj's stepmother, who was the mother of Uttama. So Uttama was already on the lap of the king, Uttanapada, and Dhruva Maharaj was only 5 years old. So naturally, he also wanted to sit on the lap of the king. But his stepmother, Suruchi, forbade him from doing so. And very cruelly, she said, Dhruva Maharaj, your mother is more or less not very much liked by the king. She is more or less like a maidservant. And you're not my son. And therefore, I forbid you to sit on the lap of who you think is your father, because actually he's not really so much your father, because you were not born from my womb. Now, if you want to become qualified to sit on the lap of your father, then I suggest that you pray that you die immediately, and that you take birth from my womb, and then you'll be qualified to sit on the lap of your father. So Dhruva Maharaj was being a Kshatriya, he was not only disturbed, but he was quite intensely angry because King Uttamapada didn't interfere and didn't say anything. So Dhruva Maharaj, in great anger, went to his mother and said, Mother, the king, Suruchi, told me that I can't sit on the lap of my father, and my father didn't protest, and therefore I can't sit on the lap of my father because Suruchi told me that I'm not qualified because I was not born from her womb. His mother was very humble, Suniti, a very pure lady. She said, yes, it's true. Your father neglects me. He doesn't treat me very seriously. There's nothing I can do about it. So Dhruva Maharaj said, well, all right, then tell me, how can I become qualified to get a kingdom greater than that of my great-grandfather? Uttamapada was his father, Swayambhuva Manu was his grandfather, and Lord Brahma was his great-grandfather. To get a kingdom bigger than Brahma's universe is quite difficult. It's quite a challenge. Suniti, his mother, said, the only way it's possible is that if Krishna gives you that such a kingdom. But I advise you, don't think ill of Suruchi. That if you think ill of Suruchi, then your mind will simply become contaminated and you'll never be able to obtain your goal of getting mercy from Krishna. Material nature, Maya, will give us every reason to tell us why we're justified in becoming disturbed at others or becoming developing an animosity towards others or even hating others. As a matter of fact, modern society is simply always trying to divide people up by designating people. Oh, this person's an Indian, this person's a Pakistani, this person's an American, this person's a Russian, this person's black, this person's white, this person's female, this person is male, this person's this and that. Whole society is meant to give people designations to divide them up so they feel some animosity, some hatred. And that way, people can be controlled easily because they become weakened by the illusory energy. And because of this hatred and animosity, they forget that everyone is Krishna's eternal servant, and therefore their relation with Krishna becomes practically impossible to be developed properly. And the result is that the demons they think they're becoming powerful because the people that they're controlling and misinforming, miseducating about reality become weakened by the illusory energy. And it's not that the demons become any stronger really, but because of their past activities, they've been put in a position to be able to influence people more than the regular people in the society. But ultimately, they all become destroyed by the illusory energy and having to take birth again in the material world. And the more control one has, the more one misdirects people, then the more the consequences become rather unpleasant. A regular person in society is misled, they'll have to suffer because of that. But the persons who are misleading them, those who are, as it says here, those who are deceitful and those who are atheistic, then they become the most, they're put into the least desirable situations in their future lifetimes. They've worked hard to get into a position of control and influence, but because they've misused it, that influence and control serves them to become even more degraded in their future lifetimes. So we don't have to hate anyone. We don't have to be antagonistic towards anyone. Just like the 6 Goswamis, Krishna Kirtan Gana Gana Paro Premamritam Bodhini Dira Dira Guna Priyo Priya Paro, that to the Dhiras, to the sober-minded, and to the Adhiras, those who are uncontrolled, the 6 Goswamis were equally merciful to both of them by trying to engage them in the Harinam Sankirtan. So rather than dwell upon all the problems that go on presently or in the past or even in the future, we should simply try to engage ourselves in this Harinam Sankirtan and engage others. There is one devotee named Gadadhar. Gadadhar is known to be the shadow of Srimati Radharani, which means he's pure devotee, expansion of Srimati Radharani, and the effulgence of Srimati Radharani. The effulgence of Srimati Radharani. In other words, such a great devotee, he practically uses effulgent to Srimati Radharani. But there was one Zamadar, or Qazi actually, one Qazi, and he hated the Hindus. and he was inflicting great harm upon them. But one day, Gadadhar decided to go to his house in the middle of the night. And Gadadhar went to his house and said, woke the Qazi up and said, chant Hare Krishna. So the Qazi woke up and he was infuriated. But then when he saw it was Gadadhar, because Gadadhar's influence was so pure, they said, oh, go away, Gadadhar. Leave me alone. Let me go to sleep. No, chant Hare Krishna. All right, tomorrow I'll chant Hare Krishna. Just go away. So when Gadadhar heard that the Qazi had chanted Hare Krishna, he started to dance in ecstasy. He said, oh, you've chanted Hare Krishna, fantastic. Just keep on chanting. So even to the most degraded, miserable people, if a devotee is qualified enough to influence them, then he tries to get them to engage in the Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. If not, then if someone is so fallen and degraded and antagonistic, we should not become antagonistic towards them, but we should simply not take their association and leave. Of course, sometimes philosophically we may try to defeat them, but if we can't do that, then we should just leave and not get entangled in becoming antagonistic towards them. Our business is to spread Krishna prema, not to learn how to become a martial artist and fight with people. So actually, I'll stop there for now and see if there's any questions. I'll read the verse again. Yesham antikatam papam janam punya karmanam tedvan vamo nirmuktva bhajante mam dhuravrataha. Those who have acted piously in previous lives, who have become free from sinful reactions, become free from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Sometimes devotees practice bhakti yoga, and his goal this is realize some material desires. So that Krishna give wife or TV or another presents. So how a devotee can understand that this is material desire and not bhakti desire?
Well, material desire means that we've forgotten Krishna. And spiritual desire means that we've understood that what we're using is Krishna's energy. And we're doing it, this activity, according to what Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita and other books. This is an authorized activity. The scriptures authorize it. And Krishna and his representatives authorize it in the form of Guru and Sadhu. And knowing that this is authorized according to Guru and Sadhu, Krishna confirms it within the heart that this is what Krishna wants us to do. And knowing that this is what Krishna wants us to do, we do this activity in order to please him. We do it in such a way as we do it with care and attention. And the result is that recognizing that this energy belongs to Krishna and that we're doing our activity according to Krishna's authorized representatives, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and inspired by the super soul within the heart. And at the same time, doing it with care and attention in such a way as that we spontaneously remember Krishna and his service and his representatives. then we can know that this is actually a fully Krishna conscious activity. If something is missing from that equation, if we forget that this is Krishna's energy, if we do things which are not authorized, we clearly understand that this activity is what Krishna wants us to do, because Krishna's representatives have told us this is what Krishna wants us to do, and it's been confirmed by the super soul within our heart. And we're not doing it with care and attention to please Krishna, then something's lacking in our service and that needs improvement. And we'll understand that if we're not remembering Krishna while we're doing our service, if we're not Krishna conscious. Now, there may be different degrees of consciousness of Krishna, but at least minimally, by performing these three things, recognizing that everything is Krishna's, utilizing Krishna's energies in his service, and doing it with care and attention in the service to please Krishna, and therefore to some degree or another remembering Krishna. So that's called Krishna consciousness. Without that, then we're Krishna unconscious, which means we're under the influence of the illusory energy. And it's by doing these things of becoming conscious of Krishna that we actually become purified. Because in the presence of Krishna, Krishna is considered to be like the sun, and Maya is considered to be like darkness. So when Krishna is present, then darkness goes away. And if we're not conscious of Krishna, that means our darkness is really not going away. Of course, we can improve our activities in order to bring us to the point where our devotional service actually becomes devotional service. We could read Prabhupada's books, and we can hear the lectures, and so we can appreciate and see things in relationship to Krishna. We can hear about the necessity of serving the servants of Krishna, as it says in this book, in this purport, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahora Vimuktes. We can hear about that and try to the best of our ability to try to cooperate and serve Krishna's devotees, his representatives. And we can learn from those expert devotees how to do our service with care and attention in order to please Krishna. And we can judge whether we're actually, whatever, generally speaking, it goes in an order. First, we have to recognize how everything is Krishna's property. And then we will become inspired to find out what Krishna wants us to do with his energy. And then when we're doing things, when we're serving Krishna, then we become inspired to do it with more care and attention because Krishna reciprocates with us. And we become more conscious of Krishna, the more sincere our service is, the more sincerely we're doing things with care and attention for him. And that inspires us to go on hearing, chanting, and serving so that we become more aware, more consistently aware, more clearly aware of how everything is Krishna's energies, what Krishna's mission is, and how to serve it under the direction of the super soul and his representatives. And we become more loving and careful in our service to do things as Krishna would like us to do them, as his representatives give us an example to do, and how Krishna and his representatives would appreciate if we do it in a certain way. With more carefully, more lovingly, and more attentively, more consistently. Then Krishna gives us the intelligence how to make further progress so that we remember him more and more consistently. And ultimately, Krishna reveals himself to us more and more intensively through his name, his form, his quality, his pastimes, and his associates. So at least we should try to understand how everything belongs to Krishna. And then when we become, by becoming more and more faithful to understand the instructions of Krishna's representatives, becoming more and more clear what Krishna wants us to do, and then becoming more and more carefully doing it with care and attention, more and more consistently. And therefore, becoming more and more conscious of Krishna by his mercy, seeing how Krishna is helping us remember him. So we remember him more consistently, and we forget him less often. Now, if we understand everything belongs to Krishna, but we don't know what to do, then we should humbly investigate through Guru Sadhana Shastra. And when it's clear exactly what Krishna wants us to do, then we can do that with Drita Vrataha, with great determination and enthusiasm. And when Krishna sees our determination and enthusiasm, then he reveals himself to us. Like when he saw Dhruva Maharaj's enthusiasm and determination to get the kingdom greater than that of his great-grandfather, then Krishna himself personally began to help Dhruva Maharaj remember him within the heart. And ultimately, when Dhruva Maharaj's determination came to the extreme, then Krishna himself personally came and revealed himself to Dhruva Maharaj. So that's possible for all of us if we follow the process properly. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, humble obeisances. Thank you for your class. My question is, it is stated here that the sinful and the foolish, normally it's very difficult for them to take the process of Krishna consciousness. And at the same time, it's written that devotee's job is to preach to these people. And we have a similar comment in 3rd chapter where Srila Prabhupada says that normally we should not bother the sinful one and the atheist, but at the same time, devotees take the risk of preaching to them. So where is the balance in this preaching to the atheist and foolish people?
That requires some intelligence. So we have to be, when we're preaching, we have to be a little attentive who we're preaching to and what the results of our preaching are. For instance, if you go on the street, we can assume that most of the people there fit into one of those categories. Most of them are going to be foolish. They have no idea what the purpose of life is or how to achieve it. And some of them may be a little more sophisticated, more absorbed in sinful activities or even directing sinful activities. And there may be a few mental speculators and a few people who are actually controlling society to bring it to hell, to help it go to hell. So when we approach someone with a book, for instance, we hand them the book, we can see what the reaction is. Now, if they put the book in their hands, then we can say they're probably more likely to be one of the category of innocent. And if they show some appreciation for what we're doing, they may be sinful, they may be foolish, but because they've shown some symptoms of innocence, therefore we could try to engage them to the greatest extent that Krishna gives us the intelligence to do so. But if we hand someone a book and they look at it and want to rip it up, then obviously they're not a very good candidate, and we don't really immediately include them within the category of innocent. Matter of fact, we try and get the book back and try to avoid them. So in our practical dealings with others, according to our different vision and expertise, we may have the qualification to bring out the innocence that is the attraction for Krishna in some people. And other people, we may not be able to do that. And therefore we should act appropriately, for instance, by trying to avoid them and finding people who are actually innocent, meaning people we can actually influence in such a way as to show at least some appreciation or to do some engagement in Krishna's service. Buy a book, give a donation, say something nice. We haven't changed them, the category immediately from being foolish or sinful, etc. But at least we've engaged them somewhat in Krishna's service by getting some positive response from them. And therefore, to that extent, at least, we can categorize them amongst the innocent. All right, so I think we'll stop there unless there's something else. So very nice seeing most of you. Hare Krishna. Have a happy Kartik. We'll see you, I think, before the end of Kartik. I'm not so sure. But happy Kartik, happy Damodaраstikas. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaur Premanande. Happy Govardhan Puja.
Спасибо большое, Гуру Махарадж.